Hi everyone, we're back for episode 28 of Customers Who Click, and today I've got Sam McNerney with me talking about customer feedback and market research. It's obviously an incredibly important piece for any business, and really more marketers at companies big and small should be running this sort of research and really learning what drives their customers to purchase, and finding out why their customers like their products, like their competitors' products. Sam's an expert at designing surveys and really asking the right questions to ensure your feedback is useful and relevant and not biased by phrasing or the use of particular types of questions. So let's hear from Sam now. Hi, Sam. Thanks for joining me today. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, a bit of your background, and why you're doing what you do at the moment?
Sure. So I'm currently an independent consumer insight specialist. That mostly means that I rely on survey-based research to help clients answer their kind of toughest market research questions and strategy and brand questions. I spent the kind of the bulk of my experiences in the creative agency world at Publicis in New York. They're a big creative agency, part of Publicis Group, the holding company that has big clients like Walmart and various P&G brands, Citibank, the financial institution. So the kind of bread and butter of my experience is squarely in the related to the stuff that you look at when you stroll up and down an aisle, online or in a store. So before that, I got interested in behavioral science more at the theoretical level. I was kind of a freelancer in a writing capacity in that role. But it wasn't until Publicis that I kind of learned the more analytical side. So how to write a survey, how to visualize the data, how to pull out insights, how to give a presentation, how to actually help a client, all that good stuff. So now kind of you could maybe say kind of at the intersection of market research, behavioral science, consumer insights, if there is an intersection of those three things.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we're working with some pretty big brands, and kind of looking at is it that why do people click on certain products and placements, or why do they pick up certain items on off the shelves, and how do we get them to pick the items we want them to pick?
Yep. It's also so there's tactical questions like that. So P&G is really obsessed with this stuff. What product benefits do people look for when they shop for toilet paper or shampoo? What's the price range that they're looking for, and on and on and on. But also at the brand level, they're asking questions like, what should the Charmin brand represent? What should Head and Shoulders represent? Well, another client was Tampax. Your listeners might be familiar with the Like a Girl campaign, which involved video of girls running, quote, like a girl. And it showed that a lot of the girls about under 6 or 7 years old just ran as fast as they could, versus the older girls kind of played into the stereotype of unathletic girls. So there, Tampax is clearly moving way beyond the tactics of a specific product and trying to make a statement at the cultural level to kind of drive sales in that area. So it's what you said, but it's also can be much bigger and broader than that.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting that you said that P&G are obsessed with that feedback and what features and what benefits people are looking for, because I think it's something that's really lacking in e-commerce quite a lot, and not just e-commerce. Actually, lots of startups I think miss this this whole benefits-led approach, but also getting that feedback from people. So I think it's, for me, it's one of the most underrated aspects of marketing is not just using data to analyze what people are doing on your website and stuff, but actually getting feedback from customers and kind of, I guess, matching that up to that data to really understand what people are really looking for, and why they're actually really buying your product.
Yeah, so this is like coming from just spending 4 or 5 years with P&G and Walmart as your clients. Like it is almost sacrilegious to hear someone say that, because these guys spend so much time and money on soliciting customer feedback in various forms. I mean, so focus groups would be one, surveys would be one, shop-alongs would be one, where they literally have people just shop through sometimes mocked up stores, and they just follow them. In-home, and that's referred to researchers that just like observe people in their home. That sounds creepy, but it's actually a pretty helpful thing. And if you get the right research, it can be really helpful. There's a case study of that showed how in-home research led to the development of Swiffer, that disposable mop. I think there's an equivalent brand in the UK. I'm not sure what the name is, but it's the mop where you swap out the pad at the bottom every time you use it.
Oh yeah. I don't know the brand. There might even be a couple of them.
It's a big phase.
I can actually picture the advert where it's like the mop head's on like a ball joint, and so
yep, that's the one.
Super flexible, and then I think it is a she in the advert all the time. Can take off the kind of mop pad at the bottom and just chuck it away, and then just put a new one on.
So that's P&G doing its research. I mean, lately they hired neuroscientists to put people in fMRI machines and watch ads. I'm extremely skeptical. Having worked in a neuroscience lab for a hot second, and having to cap EEGs on people and tell them to sit still and try not to blink and don't move a muscle. I'm skeptical of that approach, but that's not the point. The point is that they see an opportunity, yet another opportunity to get feedback from people. So that's the game that Walmart and P&G or others are playing and for the most part winning. So to me, it's second nature to start with the customer, figure out what they need, and what they need at every level. Like, as I said earlier, at that tactical aisle level, and how they might be responding to brand messages that are kind of being plopped into culture at large.
Yeah. So, so I said that I felt that feedback was kind of really underrated and really underused. Is there a particular area that you feel is really, obviously the area you focus on is a little different, but is there an area of marketing you feel is kind of underrated, underutilized at the moment?
Yeah, I think the most underrated thing about marketing is kind of people that exist between the analytics involved in a really good A/B testing and the people involved at the brand strategy level or the brand planning level. So most people predominantly in the creative agencies. On the A/B testing side, let me just kind of give props to both sides because they're really important. And as you know, I'm preaching to the choir here. You can really boost your conversion rate by testing stuff, by testing the location of buttons, whether to include the average review, whether to include reviews. There's this famous case study called the $300 million button. You can Google it, which I learned about from the ad guy, Rory Sutherland at Ogilvy, where apparently some analytics guy included one button that yielded $300 million annually for a company. So it's got to been like Walmart or Amazon. To their e-commerce experience. And it was the continue as guest button. So this was years ago. So I think that must have been kind of the first use of that. Also, from my background in behavioral science, I know about the value of nudging. If it can help dramatically drive organ donation rates. So literally save lives. It can help people claim Social Security at the right time. And so these small little interventions that people don't really notice can really go a long way. On the other side, and this is kind of what I really learned and came to appreciate at Publicis, is the side of branding. You obviously can't really A/B test a brand. A brand is something that you seed in culture and then you let people react to. There's a good example of this. There's this great blog post by this guy named Kevin Simler called "Ads Don't Work That Way," where he basically challenges the idea that ads are designed just to build associations between emotional associations. He's making the point that it's way more social than that. So he cites this example of this ad campaign in the New York City subways that tried to get people to drink fewer sugary drinks because they're like crazy unhealthy. And what it had a bunch of images of drinks being poured out, but it was like a bunch of fat falling out of the cup, and they placed them all in public spaces. So in a way, like the unhealthiness of the drink became part of common knowledge. And so if you're sitting there in the subway drinking a Coke or whatever, now you know that the other people know that you're kind of being unhealthy. So maybe you're a little more self-conscious. So again, you can't really A/B test that. You're now existing in the world of messages and images, and you're kind of prying on people's social instincts and not just their tendency to take the path of least resistance, which is what defaults do.
Yeah.
So I think there's this rich middle ground, and I think, and I can get into this a little bit, but I think the reason it doesn't really exist is these are like two totally different, not totally, but pretty different groups of people. The world of brands is filled with people that are like obsessed with culture and ideas, but are not strong analytically at all. And they actually kind of think that stuff is just kind of like table stakes and not that important and just left for the nerds. And then, of course, on the other side is the A/B testing crowd, if I could call it that. It's like, well, what the hell is a brand for? That is so abstract. It doesn't matter. What you need is to actually test this stuff. Because, like, well, what else are you going to do to boost your conversion rate? So, yeah, maybe I'll pause there and let you react to that before we kind of get into what the middle space looks like. But that's kind of broadly kind of my analysis or how I see the world, having come from a creative agency, but now kind of getting into the world of e-commerce.
Just a couple of comments on some things you said earlier, like guest checkout. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that is always recommended now for CRO. You know, people, especially for first purchases, I think people don't like to create the account to make that purchase. First time, people just want to make it quick and easy as possible. If they have a really good experience and you follow up with some valuable information and content, then you can kind of get them to create that account, and then you can build on that data later. But generally, especially for e-commerce, it's so important just to allow people to check out quickly. And then on that advert, Subway advert, or the one about the soda, it just reminded me of, and I can't actually remember exactly how this works, but with the COVID messaging here in the UK, they realized after a while that there was a particular type of message about like staying safe and protecting others that wasn't really working. And when they just switched it up a bit, it worked significantly better. And I think it was something to do with instead of just generally, you know, like wash your hands, wear a mask, like keep everyone safe, I think they switched it to really focus on individuals and your close, like family and friends. So I think they just switched it to say, you know, keep your friends and family safe. And it was that sort of switch that suddenly they saw a much better kind of response and feeling towards that messaging, because it created that connection with people they knew rather than just anyone out there. In a lot of the companies that I've worked with and worked in, the ones that do CRO at least, or even just marketing generally, you know, brand is that separate team. They kind of sit in marketing, but they're always considered that other team that just does their, making things look pretty, coming up with keywords and terms that everyone should be using. But it's actually the marketing team, the real marketing teams that are the valuable ones. They're actually getting the work done and driving acquisition and retention. And I think part of that is actually because a lot of brand teams or brand managers that I've seen don't really focus on building that actual real brand, and that with the values and the kind of messaging that resonates with their customers and their target audience. The stuff I've seen tends to be so much more around colors and fonts and, being on brand with that sort of stuff. And that's why I think you get that disconnect, because you get those CRO people, and I've been guilty of it at times, saying, look, I don't really care about the brand stuff. If a button works better in a different color, let's use that different color. And that's because that's where the brand attitude seems to be. It's not about those values and how we should be communicating with our customers. It's these are the colors we use, these are the fonts we use, and we want to have a friendly tone of voice. And that's the approach I've seen from a lot of brand, which is why I think a lot of other marketers, like performance marketers, tend to push it aside a little bit and say, all right, you do your thing over there, we'll get on with the marketing.
So I'll tell you about like an exercise or a piece of research that I like to do with some clients that I think is this good middle ground and kind of alert people to how important this stuff is. By the way, I am sympathetic. I mean, if you're a small or medium-sized business and if you're a CMO, like just getting the factory up and running is a massive challenge. And the last thing you want is some like ad guy rolling in talking about how your brand needs to be relevant and culture and all this shit. It's like, that's not what I'm prescribing. But anyways, what I like to do is create a survey, recruit people. You can recruit whatever sample you want. Send them to a website and ask them a question. What does this brand stand for? Or complete the following sentence. This brand stands for blank. Now, let's say you're selling any given product and the copy on your landing page is a product benefit. Like this helps relieve pain, or it's more filling, or whatever. And let's say you scroll down a little bit and it has a message about sustainability, about how this brand is, it's generally a green brand. And then let's say you scroll down again and start seeing some of the actual products with some of the pricing. So right there, like in the first few seconds, it'd probably be kind of hard to answer that question, because there's three different kind of strategies being activated there. Product benefit, product price, and then a kind of sustainability play. So a lot of times that is kind of hard to capture with, I guess, what you might call traditional A/B testing. Although you can correct me here. I guess you would kind of throw in like end of the website survey to try and answer that. But I found that this approach of just recruiting an outside sample and sending them to the website and asking this question can be really eye-opening. Because it's so obvious what our brand stands for from the inside, but to get that outside perspective can go a long way. Absolutely agree. I run a lot of surveys to existing customer bases and people who kind of browse the website and leave. And I don't focus too much on what do you think this brand stands for, but there's a lot of, did you find what you're looking for? Or what was the reason you didn't make your purchase? What's the reason you haven't, you only made one purchase and never came back again? And that sort of feedback is a bit more related to what, I guess what we're talking about as CRO.
and that optimization piece. But you do tend to get messages and feedback related to missing messaging or messaging that doesn't really resonate with those people.
Totally. And so, like, why does this matter? Why, let's see, the counter argument would be something like, well, we're just arming people with the most relevant information. What could be wrong with that? And I think the problem is that there's like implicitly, or maybe consciously sometimes, if someone is just a little skeptical about what you do, they're going to be less likely to buy. Versus if someone hits your landing page and thinks, oh, I know exactly what these guys are about, they're a little more likely to buy. Now, I bet the percent increase and decrease is really small, but man, I mean, that doesn't mean that there's not a big difference in profit, does there? So I think the next step I would do after one of these analyses is then to I think this is where some really good market research could come in. If you can ask clever questions and be creative, then you might be in a better position to pick one of those routes. So I mentioned 3 earlier: the product, benefit, price, and sustainability. Those are just 3. There could be other directions, but eventually you're going to have to kind of land on one, and that's where I think there's another good example of where a good middle ground could. The middle ground between A/B testing and the world of brands comes in, because in that situation, you want someone who's good with data. And by good with data, I just mean like can work on Excel and visualize the data and not throw it into like 50 slides of PowerPoint that will lull you to sleep like Ambien. I mean, that you just need to be kind of competent. But you also want someone who appreciates the world of brands, so they know what questions to ask. One of my favorite questions I ever asked was for P&G Charmin. We told people, imagine your office workspace was all the toilet paper suddenly was switched over to Charmin. How excited would you be? So we deliberately removed control, price, all the things that you typically measure, preference, and just impose this brand on people. To kind of see how they reacted. And of course, we swapped out Charmin with all the competitors to measure the differences. So that was just kind of measuring brand equity, which of course P&G is obsessed with. But you can use that same kind of creativity to kind of think outside the box to ask, a good survey question that can then make the answer to that question, like, what the hell do I stand for, a little more obvious. That to me is the hard part. I mean, it really is challenging picking the kind of strategic framework or direction or whatever you want to call it to then kind of make all your decisions around. I mean, you tell me. I mean, in your experience as kind of an e-commerce pro, would you say that that's true? I mean, that these brands really struggle with kind of being a brand and figuring out what to do or what their identity is?
I do, yeah, because all you have to do is go to 5-10 different fashion sites and ask someone to explain what the difference is between them. Not only are all the sites almost identical in terms of actual like layout and structure, branding will be quite similar as well, and there isn't much, in my opinion, on a lot of these sites, there isn't much kind of branding, like real branding, like we're talking about. I think if you ask people, in fact, I was speaking to someone the other day about where she buys like clothes from, and she said this particular retailer, and it was pretty much because they do free shipping, free returns, and she said she probably wouldn't buy from them if they didn't do free returns. And so there's no brand loyalty there. It's literally just the convenience of being able to buy online and return stuff if she doesn't want it. But I notice it a lot when I see a brand that does stand for something. So I've seen, this year this year more and more, I think, a lot of brands who are very focused about the environment, and their products are recycled or they're made from specific materials which are more environmentally friendly and don't use so much water or whatever. And it's very, very obvious that these brands actually do stand for that, and that's really a core part of their values. And they're not just sticking a banner on their website saying, yeah, we're environmentally friendly.
Go ahead.
Which brand was it? It was, I think I saw this today. There's I won't say the brand just in case it's wrong. A meat alternative product in the UK received complaints about their advertising because they claimed it was more environmentally friendly, but there was absolutely nothing to back it up. They didn't provide any evidence, any information, and they had to remove the advert. And it's that sort of thing which I think can actually damage brands a little bit and damage that trust. If you make these claims and either you can't back it up or you just don't do anything to back it up, it just becomes a bit meaningless.
So I have to plug a good book here, and it has nothing to do with the world of consumers or e-commerce. It actually has to do with end-of-life care. So the book is Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. He's a surgeon at a hospital in Boston, and he writes for the New Yorker. So super accomplished, great writer, really compelling. And his book is about end-of-life care, how we screw it up, how we can fix it. And how we screw it up is we basically just try and prolong it instead of making life worth living. And there's this really interesting piece of research he mentions in the book that showed that terminally ill patients who have discussions about their end-of-life goals actually live longer than patients with similar conditions who just receive the standard medical treatment. And the discussions revealed what people actually care about. Someone mentioned like all he wants is the ability to watch football on Sundays and enjoy eating chocolate ice cream. And as soon as he can't have those things, like you pull the plug. And the key to these discussions is clearly, as Gawande says, is doctors who know how to have them. And he distinguishes between paternalistic relationships and informative relationships, the former just being the doctor providing what they think is best for the patient, the latter being what the doctor is just giving the patient the facts but letting them decide, to kind of ultimately land on a third type where the doctor's role is to give patients the facts but help them determine what they want. And as a researcher, that really resonated, because I like hate the idea of being objective and love the idea of kind of biasing people intentionally in order to get them or almost help them surface up the things that they really care about. So, because it's like one to kind of riff off the earlier example. It's one thing to learn that someone is suffering from like joint pain, and it's another to learn that the pain is preventing them from spending more time with their grandkids, and that's all they really care about. So if you're a business in that space, and you're trying to answer that really difficult question, like what problem am I trying to solve? Like, why do I exist? It really helps to have a researcher who kind of plays the role of that clinician, in that they're surfacing up these desires about desires, the things that we really want. If you don't get to that next level, you're probably gonna end up in that same zone, that exactly what you just said about that retailer. There's like 15 other brands doing the same thing. And yeah, like free shipping on returns is probably really, really helpful. But ultimately, you want to be really clear about like why you exist. I think the case I'm making here is that there's a competitive advantage there. That if you can answer that question, you can make more money. And I think kind of previously this type of thinking may have been seen as like overly humanistic or philosophical, but shouldn't researchers just remain neutral and feed us the data? But like the doctors that are in that position to give the facts, but also help determine the needs, I think there's a kind of a new role. This is what I refer to as middle ground for them to kind of be shaping these big identity questions. So yeah, it's such a good book that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, except that it kind of has everything to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah, I can see how it relates. It's the businesses that just crack on with their own plan and I guess give the customers what they think the customers want, kind of get to a certain level, and that level can be huge, to be fair. But you'd expect the businesses that listen to their customers and take that feedback in and give them what they need, but also work towards what they want as well, will build that loyalty, build better lifetime values with those customers, better word of mouth, which then brings in more customers as well. And you'd expect them to get to that next level, really.
Yeah, and this is basically now P&G's business model. I mean, the reason I'm not in a position to talk about P&G's business model. It's extremely sophisticated and complex, but the point is that they have a ton of brand equity out there, and it's arguably more important than the actual products. So if we do like a Maslow's hierarchy of products, they would be at like peak transcendence, in the sense that they got the factory up and running, they got the products out the door at a good price in all the stores, and now they're existing heavily kind of at the brand level. So it's really as I said at the beginning, like that's kind of the world I'm coming from, and I always kind of be biased by it in the sense that I always think that that's kind of ultimately the goal. And that's why I mentioned that bathroom question earlier, is they were Charmin and Bounty in that case were interested in just more creative ways to measure that brand equity. The traditional way is the NPS, would you recommend this brand to a friend? Which is like, kind of important. I think that correlates with sales. But it doesn't really quite capture the emotional, that excitement factor, if you will. So I'm constantly trying to think of good questions, survey questions or otherwise, that that kind of just do a better job of capturing how people think, what people think about a brand or a landing page or a website. So in turn, a client can actually, be in a better position to figure out what to do or what their identity is. Now I can already hear myself drifting into the brand planning world and kind of away from the world of A/B testing. So you have to check me here and say, okay, that's a bunch of bullshit. At the end of the day, like, you need an e-commerce site that works and people can click on the right things, figure out the price, and go to checkout. Because without that, I mean, everything I'm saying is probably stupid and useless.
I mean, I know there are two schools of thought, and that is really important. But the problem with that is it just going down that route of this website works, people can find and buy what they need, is there's not much reason. It kind of depends on what you sell, obviously. There's no real reason to remember your name, your brand name. So you might buy, let's say watches. I like watches. I might know that I want a particular brand of watch, and I will find it for the right price on a particular website. That just makes it really easy to buy the watch. But if there's no kind of brand feeling to it, and there's no, certain type of copy and tone of voice resonates well with me and makes me think I like this business. Whether it's in the email that I get after the purchase or just some of the stuff on the site. If that stuff isn't there, I probably just won't remember what the name of that website is. And so next time I look for a watch, I'm just going to Google where can I buy a Fossil watch or Rolex, and scan some websites. And again, if one of them has the experience that makes it really easy, I'll buy from them. But if that second time I have that brand resonates with me, I'm going to remember the name, and then I'm going to come back to them. And then I know there are loads of people who say, conversion optimization is, the on-site optimization and product optimization isn't that important. What's really important is that the website looks fantastic and the copy is well written. And if you get those two right, no matter what else is happening on your site, you'll get the sales. And yeah, I don't quite agree with that. I think it needs to be a middle ground. I do think everything's got to be there, but the important thing for me always is not so much brand. I'm not a real brand person, but you've got to build customer loyalty and engagement. You've got to focus on that lifetime value, and the lifetime value is always going to be higher if people remember your name and want to come back to your site to purchase and want to talk about your business with their friends.
So let me briefly defend the just make it look good crowd, because one part of research that I unexpectedly fell in love with is visualizing data, and to the point where I would spend a lot of time making sure it looked good, perhaps too much time. But I was just kind of following the logic of my industry, and the logic is, images and that gut reaction people have when they look at something matter a lot, because they're only going to look at it for 1 second. And as a researcher, that it's going to be like a half a second. So when it came to actually giving presentations, I kind of turned it into a science, in that it needed to be really clear what was being communicated through that data. Now, I also know the downside of focusing on that too much is that you, of course, lose the forest for the trees. So it's like, okay, that piece of information is clearly communicated, but what are you trying to say? Like, what's the point of your presentation? So I think that's roughly, analogous to what we're riffing on here.
Fortunately, with e-commerce sites, I don't think you get too much of the extreme. You don't get sites that are just the most beautiful thing. Well, I've seen a few actually, but you don't get many sites which are super, super just design focused and make it look like the most awesome thing, but actually UX is a bit difficult. And you don't get too many sites anymore which are quite easy to click through and find what you want, but the design is horrible. So fortunately, I think that you get a bit of middle ground, but I do think there is benefit to being a nicer design site. I think if you put two sites which had the exact same UX, but one of them was designed really nicely, really professionally and modern, and one was a bit of an older design, the colors maybe weren't such a great mix or whatever, I do think people kind of trust the nicer design site better initially. And so, yeah, I do. One of the things I do push for is nicer designs and redesigning sites that are a bit old or outdated. I suppose I'm a mix of all over the place, really. I want to make it super functional, but it also has to look good.
I wanted to go back on one little thing that you said about the Rolex. I think there's also a social element there. So what I mean by that is you want to, as a customer, you want to trust the brand. and you want to like the watch. But I also think you kind of want people to notice it when you go out into the world. And I don't mean that in a vain way or an arrogant way. I mean like anybody, when we buy something and we wear it or use it out in the world, there's just a little bit of signaling that's always going on, no matter kind of who you are. So there's I mentioned earlier this blog post called "Ads Don't Work That Way." There's another really good example in there of this, and he mentions Corona, the beer.
Yeah.
And he says that the traditional assumption is that all those ad campaigns about beaches. Do you have those in the UK? The Corona with the beach, like you're on vacation.
Yeah, the Mexican beer.
Corona. Yeah.
It's a huge, massively popular beer here. It was one of those crazy things. I'm guessing you guys had it as well with COVID. It's called coronavirus. The shelves, the only beer left on shelves was Corona, which is just the most illogical thing. But sorry, go on.
I know it's pretty funny though. What CMO would plan for that? Anyways, so his point was, the traditional view is run all these ads. So when you go to the grocery store, you see the Corona, you think about beaches. It's like you're on vacation. You buy the beer, you drink it. Oh, I'm on vacation. He calls this, I think, emotional inception. Like you're implanting an emotion. And he says that this is like all kind of total bullshit. We're not that, you can't manipulate people that much. But you can kind of leverage our social instincts. So let's say you're invited to a barbecue and it's like 20 people. It's a nice backyard. It's in the afternoon. What beer would you want to buy? So when you show up at that barbecue, you kind of send the signal like, hey, I'm here to have a good time and chill, but not get like super wasted. Corona would actually be a really good beer for that, as opposed to, Bud Light in the US is probably going to more send the signal like, I'm going to drink 1 million of these and we're going to watch sports. And we're also going to buy a bunch of Doritos and pizza and it's going to be awesome. And that does sound pretty awesome, right?
Pretty much the image I get. But like Corona here would be, it's a sunny day. You want to go for some beers in the park or for a barbecue or whatever. Corona with the lime is kind of the first beer that would come to mind.
Totally. And so, by the way, I love thinking about brands in this setting. Like maybe not literally you show up at a barbecue, but you're walking down the street with a white t-shirt and suddenly on the front of the t-shirt is the Guinness logo. So the question I'd ask to a person who I impose that scenario on is like, what do you think people think of you now? So you can do a control too. You ask people, you're walking down the street with a white t-shirt. What do people think of you? And then your A/B test, the B would be, you're walking down a street with a Guinness shirt. What do people think of you? It's kind of a fun way to measure the social aspects of a brand. And which in my opinion are like really important is like, what signals does your brand send? How do people receive those signals? So when I think about the watch, Rolex and the role of brands, I think it's really important to remember that second or third element is, in addition to trusting the website and liking the product, what you probably helps figure out, like, how do people feel out and about when they're using it? In what context do they use it? Again, I hope I'm not making abstract points here. I mean, these are all scientific questions to me that you can test with a good survey setup.
It's a really good point because there's actually a beer here, whose name I won't mention, but it's basically known as wife beater.
Oh yeah. I
And
didn't.
it's and if you see someone with a can of that, specifically the can, not their kind of famous glass. If you see someone with a can of it, I think it's a worse impression than a lot of other beers, or even if someone has the glass. But yeah, it's a really interesting way of phrasing those questions, because I know from my experience, running surveys is difficult. It is really difficult to actually get the right questions there to give you actual, like, genuinely the right answer. Well, obviously there's no right answer, but valuable feedback from customers. It is so easy to just add that little bit of bias by putting the wrong word on there, or mentioning, like I think when we first spoke a few weeks ago, I mentioned a survey that had been running at a business that I worked with, and one of the questions on their survey was a survey for people who cancelled their subscription, or hadn't upgraded from the free trial to the subscription, and one of the answers was £9.99 is too expensive. And it stood out as just the obvious answer to pick. The others were stuff like there weren't enough magazines in the app, or the magazine that I like to read isn't available, stuff like that. But just £9.99 is too expensive was just such a loaded, biased option that it was so, obviously the majority of the answers were for that. So I kind of had to dig into the rest of the data a little bit to see what the actual specific feedback from people was.
Yeah. And I can't remember, did you gain more clarity, or were you able to sidestep the obvious answer, or is more research needed?
Yeah, I mean, we redid the survey. It probably still wasn't fantastic. Like, you'd probably tear it to pieces, but I think we changed it to something like just something around like the price is too high, or something like that. So we took away the digits £9.99, took away the too expensive, just kind of rephrased it a little bit, which I think helped a bit. But you could see from the comments people were making, there were loads of comments around people just not using it as much as they'd like to. Like, so they were basically saying they didn't get the value from it. So it wasn't £9.99 was too expensive. They didn't think they were getting the value from that £9.99.
Yeah.
So then we started implemented messaging around how much value we thought they had got from it, by looking at magazines and kind of putting some prices together and saying, well, we know in this month you read this magazine, this magazine, this magazine. So on that basis, compared to buying the magazines off the shelf, from a newsagent or whatever, you have saved this amount of money by using the subscription. And that sort of messaging worked really, really well.
Yeah.
It's the same as the, sorry. Same as when you break down pricing. You see it a lot with subscriptions. £9.99 is like the price of a coffee a week or something like that. It's when you kind of break down what is actually quite a small pricing anyway, but you break it down even further to relate it to what people kind of understand. And I found that sort of messaging works really well as well.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, you can get real flexible with how you frame a price. And that's kind of the strain of behavioral science I emerged from, is framing effects, mental accounting, all those things that at first don't really make sense until you read a little bit about our evolutionary history and get a better sense of what we're equipped to dealing with. Nodding along about the fact that the wording really does matter. I mean, I'm of two minds here. And the first is that you really do have to pay attention to this. I've read a good reading here. If you want another recommendation, this is like 70 years older, is George Gallup has a book called, I think, The Pulse of Democracy, which is kind of a grandiose title because most of the book is about like how he does polling. And he's just, this guy was obsessed with all the things that you should be concerned about, including, framing effects. He's got like 3 pages on when to use forbid versus not allow, or the difference between those two. And it had to do, and I can't quite remember the details, but he was doing a poll about American foreign policy and opinions towards it. And he was deciding between those 2 phrases, or that phrase in the word, because the results would be dramatically different. This is around World War II. And so this stuff like really, really matters. I mean, in presidential polling, it really matters. Measuring attitudes towards policy, it really matters. And of course, with products, it really, really matters. So, okay. So the second mind is at some point you got to step outside all those rules and kind of rely on your own experiences a little bit more. So the bathroom example with the toilet paper was something that actually happened. Of course, this is like total comedy. Our office had to downgrade our toilet paper because the pipes couldn't handle 2-ply. So we had to switch from Charmin to like a cheaper version, and everyone like freaked the fuck out. Like it was, okay, maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic, but you can imagine like working in an office and they change the toilet paper. It's like going to be a topic of conversation.
Yeah, I've had that. It's it's surprisingly it becomes a surprisingly big topic when your toilet paper gets downgraded.
It was so funny. Anyways, that's I kind of took off my do's and don'ts of survey logic hat off and put on the let's see, like I'd like to think the same sort of hat that like a creative professional, writer, comedian, etc. would put on and say, okay, I just felt something. Like I felt the weight of a brand through this kind of random occurrence. I'm pretty sure other people felt that too. How do I pull that out? Like, how do I phrase a question where other people see what I just saw? And in that case, like sometimes you can be direct. I mean, you could say like, what brand would you most want? This is like perfectly fine question. But I found that the value of the question I asked is how excited would you be if all the toilet paper was swapped out for Charmin? Is it actually helped the strategist think through the problem? After that, I emailed the account director and was like, man, think of all the places where we use toilet paper but have no control over it, like airports. Why don't we do a branded campaign with an airport? Like traveling sucks. We stock the good stuff. Now, again, that didn't go anywhere because we found out a lot of the airports, their pipes don't, their pipes can't handle the 2-ply cotton either. So not that I don't have some successful success story at the end of this example, but in my experience, we do, I find that a more indirect and creative way of asking those questions is just kind of helps the strategists and other people that you're working with. I don't know, maybe think about the problem a little bit differently, open up new opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. You're moving away from just the standard kind of surveying questions. Have you got any advice for maybe marketers who want to be getting more feedback from customers and surveying more? Are there any big or common mistakes you see people make with trying to get this information that people should avoid? And are there some key things that you'd say this is absolutely what you should be doing or thinking about if you're trying to collect this feedback?
Well, my first reaction is I have way more to learn from the world of marketing than it has to learn from me, and I'm really grateful to each time I get to speak or pitch to a CMO, because starting with their needs and their challenges is always a good is just kind of the way to go. That's kind of my disclaimer there. But if I was in a position to maybe dish out some advice, I would say to small, medium, and large businesses to not be afraid to ask deeply personal questions in the context of a survey or any other environment in which you can solicit consumer feedback. I think you can use those questions, like a question like, what do you really value? What activities give you a sense of fulfillment? I think those types of questions can help you get to that second level we mentioned earlier about what, and it's at that level you kind of enter a better position to understand what people really want and what problem you're trying to solve for. To go back to yet another theme we mentioned earlier, there's the type of people that ask those questions, like, what do you care about in life and what do you find fulfilling? Those are kind of meaty philosophical questions that have kind of fallen out of cultural favor. I don't know a lot of people that ask those questions in general. Those typically are like, you're in the territory of philosophy and theology. But nonetheless, I think they have a place, maybe not a huge place, but a place in the world of consumer behavior and research. So I would encourage brands to think along those lines. Again, all this should be grounded in good science. You need to set up the survey in the right way and do good analysis and visualize it. And if there's room for a control group, use it to your advantage. So I'm not totally suggesting just to go out, cast the net wide, and ask people what they care about. It should be grounded in it should be framed the right way and tied to the business challenge the right way. But it's a good starting point. Just to think at that level, I think, can be helpful.
Yeah. So don't just go out and ask these deep personal questions, but don't be afraid to ask them if you think they're relevant to what the actual feedback you're trying to get. And people will understand that. I think, one of the reasons people probably don't do that so much, I guess, is it's not quantitatively accessible. You have to read a lot of this feedback, and it takes time. And you've got to have the resource to actually really assess all this feedback, and someone who actually understands how to assess it and how one comment might relate to a score they've given. So something I've seen with NPS scores. I think, yes, NPS scores are good. I think they're useful, but I think they are a bit limited. And part of that is because you will get comments from people saying, this was absolutely fantastic, no complaints at all, but they give it a score of a 7 or an 8, I think, which is a kind of neutral person. But their comment indicates that they're actually super happy. And I think even one of the previous companies I worked with, I personally contacted a lot of people who gave NPS scores and feedback to really try and assess what their feedback really meant. And so many times it felt like the number score they had given was actually a little bit arbitrary. They weren't.
Yeah.
They were super happy, but they just kind of didn't want to give 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. They just, I know I'm quite bad at that. I very, very rarely give 10 out of 10, even if I am super happy. There's just something going on in my head which says, no, you can't give 10 out of 10. It's not possible. And there are other people who probably feel kind of a similar way, or people who, they have been perfectly happy with their purchase experience and the product they received, but it's just not absolutely wowed them. And it might be just because the product doesn't. Like it might be quite a mundane product that just fulfills a job in your house or whatever. But because it's not super exciting, people won't give it 10 out of 10.
That 1 through 10 scale is so odd, isn't it? I mean, I think, again, nodding along in agreement, you have a little conversation with yourself am I a 7? Am I an 8? I've become a huge fan of just asking a question like that and giving them two options, yes or no.
Yeah.
It's like, decide, would you recommend this product to a friend or not? I mean,
well, I think didn't eBay, I don't know if they still do it, but I think eBay used to rate your sellers on just yes or no. Like, would you recommend this seller? I think, and it was literally
that just seems more. There's almost a kind of an odd sort of pleasure involved in being forced to make a decision. It's almost like I appreciate. I'm not familiar with that eBay example, but just as I run that scenario through my head, it's almost like, oh, thanks for just making
it easy for me. One final question then. I get maybe more as a consumer for you, because you're not a marketer. Do you have any pet peeves when it comes to marketing? Are there any like tactics out there you see that kind of bother you, or even know that actually really get to you and work on you, and you're annoyed that they actually work on you all the time?
It's funny that you asked this, because I just published something kind of in this vein. The marketers who call themselves storytellers, but they don't actually tell stories, is a little bit of a pet peeve. A story has a beginning, middle, and end, and like an emotional arc and characters. And I rarely see that in marketing. And I think it's just kind of fashionable to rebrand yourself as a storyteller. It kind of aligns with the goals of content marketing. So that's my kind of snobby, but sincere thing that annoys me about the marketing world. But I mean, to superficially to criticize marketers for superficially jumping on a trend, it's like criticizing actors for being dramatic.
Yeah, but no, I know what you mean. I know some people who really focus on storytelling, and the stuff they post on LinkedIn in particular is really fantastic. There are stories there that they do have those characters, they do have those emotions, and it works really well at getting the point across. But I don't recall any of them calling themselves storytellers. So Sam, this has been absolutely fantastic. I think we could probably have gone on for a lot longer. So maybe there's a part 2 to this one. But really great stuff. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way of doing that?
So the personal website is just my name, sammcnerney.com. Same, and it's through there. You can get email, little bio if you're interested. So that's the main portal. And then feel free to happy to connect on LinkedIn. But yeah, it's a pleasure. I mean, we could keep going here forever. So appreciate the you reaching out and setting this up and asking great questions. I enjoyed it. Yeah,
me too. Thanks, Sam.
Customer feedback and research is just so important to move your business forwards and take things to the next level. But just trying to collect it isn't enough. You've got to do it right. You've got to ask the right questions. You've got to provide the right answers for your quantitative research. You've got to be careful not to introduce bias into your questioning. And you've got to make sure you're just asking the right questions generally. Being a bit clever and creative is a great way to approach this. As people do get used to the same old questions. They know they're being surveyed. So sometimes they'll give the answer they feel you want to hear, or the one they feel is supposed to be correct. So a great way of gathering this feedback is to give people kind of odd situations or just more creative scenarios and questions that require a bit more thought through answers that don't seem directly related. But when you dive in and really assess the answers, you can get some great insight from it. If you want to learn more about customer research, reach out to Sam on LinkedIn or check out his blog, Here's My Question. And of course, you can always email will@customerswhoclick.com and I can point you in the right direction. Next up, I've got Rishi Rat with me talking about the importance of copywriting and using a story-led approach to sales and conversion. But until then, keep those customers clicking.